What's going on, everyone? Welcome, Rabid here, and today I'm going to show you how to solo mine Bitcoin for free off solar, fast and easy. All right, so looking at these panels, altogether these are 200 watts. Obviously, depending on efficiencies, you won't get the full 200, but you should get pretty close depending on the day. This was sent to me from Bluetti, and looking at the current sky here, there is some overcast, so it's not perfect conditions, but it is still nice and bright out. Let's jump in here and see exactly what we got running to the solar here. So this is the Bluetti Elite 100 V2, and this is for off-grid, backup battery packs kind of thing, and it does run off solar, which we got here, and we can see that the solar input currently is not doing anything. That's because our battery is at 100%. So to prevent overcharge, it's now running off the battery because we did charge this battery all the way up. This little miner right here is a little BitAxe 1 terahash miner, and it's only utilizing about 19 watts. So I'm going to come in and plug in this guy, which uses quite a bit more power, and burn the battery down a little bit so you can see what happens with solar, what happens when you run out of solar. Obviously, we can see right now when your battery hits 100%, it shuts off the solar and then begins running it off the battery. So while I'm waiting for the Octa.Space to boot up and burn more power here, we can see it's starting to use more. We are at around 202 watts. It's plugged in. Let's go through the other features this thing has. So down below, we can see we have DC outputs. These are USB and USB-Cs. One is 140 watt, one's a 15 watt, and then we got the USB-C 100 watts. So this is for running obviously all sorts of USB-C things and USB. We got our a little car charger port right here, as well as some barrel plugs. Some people love the barrel plugs, some people don't. These are rated for 12 volt and 9 amps by the looks of things, or 8 amps. Some people love them, some people don't. We do have 4 standard 120 volt plugs. Obviously in Europe you get different style, and this would have the European plugs. And on the side here, this is where your actual 120 volt goes into your wall right here. And this thing is actually pretty cool how it switches. So once we burn some power, I'll show you, I'll play around with it. But when this thing does run out of solar or anything, and then the battery, depending where you set it, so say 10% battery is what you set it at, it'll burn the battery down to 10%, and then it'll automatically kick in the grid. So at nighttime, you continue to mine, and you won't have any downtime whatsoever. And it happens extremely fast. So that's pretty awesome that it does that. The other things that you can do is also charge it off the grid. Obviously we want to use solar because we're trying to save as much power as possible, but imagine you could take this thing to the lake, run all your cookware and stuff off it, as well as solo mine some Bitcoin at the lake. And that's something I'm going to try when summer actually hits and the lake comes up. I'm going to charge this thing up. I'm going to go to the lake. I'm going to use my phone for Wi-Fi service and fire this up on a picnic table while swimming. That's going to be pretty sweet. Mining Bitcoin at the lake. All right, so I actually plugged in another one to help kill the battery so I can show you guys kind of what's going on here. So right now we can see this miner is running about 11 terahash. This miner here is rocking about 9.7 terahash. And then down here we got about 1 terahash. So what is that? We got 11, 19, 20, 21 terahash at about 448 watts, if I can get the right angle. So 448 watts is what we're using. And we're still at 98%. Burning this down so I can actually show you what's going on with everything when the battery levels run low and stuff, but it's taken a while. As for some more specs here, this is actually an 1800 watt, 1024 watt hours, or 1.024 kilowatt hour battery charge. So that's what's going on. We're sitting at 97% now. Mining Bitcoin, a little over 20 terahash at no power cost whatsoever. Imagine if we had a Bitcoin block right now and made over $200,000 at no power fees. That would be insane. All right, so before we get into all the cool stuff here, I do want to point out a flaw that I don't really like. This is a small little backup battery pack, runs off solar. It does only allow 60 volt, 20 amp, 1000 watts max of solar input. Now, if you know anything about solar, 60 volts is really hard to get. Like, you can't even hook 2 panels in series if you're looking at big panels. You can only go 1. I do have some other panels that are coming. I'm going to hook them up, and I can get, I'm going to have to hook them in parallel because I will go over the volts, but then you can maximize at the 20. Now with these things, you never want to go over the voltage. It is okay to go over the amps, but never go over the voltage. So if you hook things in series, you're going to stack all your voltages up. Now if you hook things in parallel, you're going to start stacking up your amps, and that is okay. It's okay to go over the amps because this will limit itself to only 20 amps. So say you have 2 15 amp panels or something at 37 volts or something, and you stack them up in parallel, you'll keep your 37 volts, which is under the volt limit, but you'll be at 40 amps. But that's okay because this will limit it to 20 amps. Obviously, you're not getting full power out of your solar panels at that point, but you're not going over, you're not going to wreck anything. If you go in series and go over the voltage, you will wreck your solar MPPT controller and stuff in here, and that would be bad. So you can go over your amps, but not your volts. And this is very low amperage and very low voltage when you're trying to look at large solar arrays. You can only put in something small and something very mobile. So that is a huge disadvantage. But again, this is a very small battery pack, but it works perfect for small Bitcoin mining like this. All right, so now let's go into some of our app settings to kind of show you everything that's going on. Here we can see we're at 137 watts, 136 watts, batteries 92%, and we're utilizing 448 watts from our Bitcoin miners. Obviously, we're going to be losing battery power because our solar isn't matching that. So it's going to be slowly ticking down on our battery here. So if we actually come into our settings here, if we want to quickly charge this up, we can allow it to utilize the grid by coming into working mode, prioritize, and here's where we set our sock setting. So here, if I adjust this up to 100%, it's going to kick into the grid, and we're going to begin using grid power to charge us up to 100%. Now we can see the grid kicked in at 920 watts. That's something we don't want to do because unless you're going camping or something, then you use that. But right now we just want to use as much power mitigation as we possibly can off solar. So I'm going to turn that back off and put it to where I usually am, which I usually have it around the 10% mark. Now, they estimate that if you're going to use this long term all the time, you should be between the 40 and 75% all the time. I've just been running this at about 10%. Then once it does hit that 10% mark, it just kicks in the grid, and then it'll burn the battery down. Like from my mining, when the sun goes down, you have no solar left. Once the battery does hit 10%, it'll then pull from the grid automatically to maintain the load that it has. It's not going to automatically shut everything down. You can tell it to do that, but in this case, the way I'm running it, I'm still mining 24/7, but once the battery is down to that 10% where I have it set, it will then pull the grid power and then maintain the load so I continue to mine Bitcoin solo. So I'm mitigating pretty much half the day in power costs here, depending on your battery. If I had a lot more batteries charged, it could go throughout the entire night and not have to use any battery power. So there's also that to think about as well. All right, so now we're going to play around in the app on kind of emulate what happens when it gets to 10%, just to show you. Or if you want to, quickly charge it up because the night's coming down. We can see we're down to 135 watts on solar. So I'm going to come into here. We're going to go back into our PV prioritize, which is right here. Click on that, go to the sock settings, and we're sitting at about 91% battery. I'm going to adjust this to 91%. So that's just like it's hitting where we have it set right now. So if I back out of here, our grid here should kick in. You can see it starts high and then it should drop lower to where we're matching our 445 watts that our miners are using. And then it's going to continue to charge the battery with our solar. So see there we can see it's dropping down. 444 watts, the same as what our miners are using. So it's maintaining the load right now of our load that we're pulling, and we're pulling in the extra power with the solar. This is the same thing that you would see if you lost your solar and then the grid continues to maintain the load overnight. All right, so I unplugged. You can see the other two bigger miners here. I'm only running the little Bidax now at 19 watts. So as mentioned, this is a 1.024 kilowatt hour or 1,024 watt hours worth of battery storage. So if we come into our phone again here and we're looking at it, it actually shows us that right now it'll charge in about 54 minutes. But if I look at the actual how many kilowatt hours this little miner uses, that's only 45.6, 0.45, so less than 1. So in theory, this should run 24/7 uninterrupted free power because the battery pack is good enough to last a whole day. So if we have bad sun tomorrow, it should still be able to last, but we won't be able to charge it. But at that point, you know, you can use some grid. It's only 19 watts, whatever you want. But we should be able to get a battery charge tomorrow. So that's very interesting, as when it comes to this battery is definitely suitable for a solo Bitcoin miner. You could probably get 2 of these running off this 24/7 with these little 200-watt panels and run them 24/7 at 0 power costs. All right, so I'm going to let this charge, and then I'm going to run it overnight and see how much battery. So later on, once I lose solar, we're going to look at our percentage on what we got in our battery. Then we'll come back and look at some other things and see if it ran all night off just the battery utilizing 0 power for solo mining Bitcoin. All right, so looking at here, it is around 9:25 at night, so we have no solar for a few hours now. Utilizing 19 watts, 0 watts on the input, and our battery is at 77%. Now, if we do come into our app here, so I just want to hit that. So if we come into our app here, we can see that we're utilizing the battery to supply that 19 watts, and the battery is saying about 26 hours and 30 minutes remaining until the battery is discharged. So we will let this run overnight, and based on all those numbers and something we looked at earlier, is this should definitely run 24 hours a day. We should make it through all night, and then the solar should kick back in tomorrow. So I'm actually going to unplug the solar as it's not being used right now. So I'm just going to come into here, unplug it. That way, when anything happens here, I can check this in the morning and we won't have any solar coming in, just so we can get an idea of what our battery is at and we know if it actually ran the whole course and everything. So when I wake up in the morning, I'll check this and we'll see if we are still mining or not off the battery. All right, guys, so here we are. It is morning, about 8:21 a.m. We can see we still have 39% power. We're utilizing 19 watts still, and our miner is still running. So we went for 24 hours using no power costs, 100% free Bitcoin solo mining. So this right here, coming into Bluetti's website, this is the Elite 100 V2 plus 200. This is the package I have right here, and it comes in multiple different ones. If you already have some panels or you're looking for some cheap panels in your area, obviously you can just get the power pack right here. This is in Canadian prices. I will have links in the description to both the US as well as the Canadian site, as well as Amazon. I believe it's listed and stuff there as well. So I'll have links for everything down below, and you can get various different packages with multiple different things here. But the major thing here is the game changer is right here. This is what I truly want for crypto mining. So this one right here, and I really hope I get the opportunity to utilize this guy, because this will run even up to 240 volts. So everything we just looked at in my review and showing you how this Elite 100 work, this is the same but bigger and badder. So the Apex 300 here, we can see it's 3840 watts, 2764.8 watt hours. So that would be about 2.7 kilowatt hours. So obviously a much bigger battery, over double the size here. And it has a lot more options. It has 2 MPPT transmitters here, still at the same 60 volts, 20 amps. But it allows for 2 solar arrays to come in. But that's not the big thing. You can get another one, this guy right here package, which comes with this Bluetti 4K attachment. This allows up to 500 volts to come into this, as well as you can just keep ramping up a bunch of batteries. I believe up to 5 batteries on this thing, and it's pretty awesome. As mentioned before, with the plugging into the grid power, you can plug 120 volt into this, and it will actually convert that 120 into 240 volt as well. So that's actually huge for some crypto miners that don't have the option to install their own double pole breakers for 240 volt. You can actually do that off 120 volt, which is amazing. Another thing is, with that solar, you obviously have a lot more capability, up to 500 volts of solar array. That is huge. That's like a normal a huge solar array, like the EG4s and stuff. That's what they utilize in terms of voltage for solar panels. So you can start running massive solar arrays on this thing, and it'll do the exact same thing with kicking into grid and off the grid. You can also plug this into 240 volt as well, I believe. I have to confirm on that, but I'm pretty sure instead of just plugging in 120 volt, you could offset this to 240 volts. So you can bring in 240 and put out 240, just like your normal grid tie connection, like we did with the 120 volt in this video. So this one is a huge update. This is the one I really want for crypto mining, and I think is the biggest upgrade as a miner and trying to offset power costs that we need. But all I had right now to showcase to you guys is this guy. It is a great little box for you guys to offset some crypto prices. But again, the big 240 volt Apex 300, I think, would be a miner's dream right now. So anyway, thanks for checking out this video. Links to everything down in the description. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on the situation. What's your power costs right now? And are you mining cryptocurrencies with the current state of the market? I'll see you on the next one. Rabid out.